All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining me today on today's series on a day in the life of a chemist. This is going to be an ongoing series where current and past international graduate students will be invited to share their career journey with us, to tell us about how their story began and where they are at their stage. And so I decided to kickstart this show with myself. A lot of people have been in contact. Many people have always known the success stories of my career at U of A and also at Yale. But there are more to it that I have not shared with a lot of people. And so today I'll be taking you through where it started and where I am now. So my name is Isaac Entry. I have adopted to call it that way because a lot of people struggle to mention it correctly. But the Ghanaian among us, we call it Isaac Entry. But it's hard for people to say that. So I have adopted the modernized one. Originally from Ghana, West Africa. That's where I had my basic school education and my undergraduate degree. I started my undergraduate degree at University of Cape Coast in the year 2011, graduated in 2015. And as a country's policy, right after you graduate, you are required to do a national service. So I opted to do a national service at the same department as a teaching assistant. And during that process, I started my graduate school application. I did my PhD at University of Alberta under the supervision of Professor John Vedres from 2016 to 2021. And right after my graduation in 2021, August, I moved to Yale University for my postdoc to work with Professor Scott J. Miller from 2021 September up until 2022 September, and then had an opportunity to be employed as a research scientist with Northern RNA in Canada. So I had to move back to Canada, and currently I am a research scientist with Northern RNA in Calgary in Canada. So the whole graduate school journey started during my undergraduate days at University of Cape Coast. Probably somewhere in my third year, fourth year. I would say in my first year, second year, I wasn't thinking of graduate school, and it wasn't even part of my plans. But during our third year in UCC, we had people who were our TAs or seniors ahead of us. And we realized that right after their graduation, majority of them opted to be teaching assistants. And a year on, we will hear that they are in US or Canada pursuing graduate school. So we got in contact with a few of them to ask them about the process. And so in the fourth year, then it became more, of a reality that, okay, I wanted to go to grad school. So the step that we took was, to decide to serve as teaching assistant, because we are told that it helped you in many regards. One, it's very easy for you to get recommendation from your lecturers because you are, on campus with them. The same time, most of the science programs at the graduate level, you'll be admitted as a teaching assistant. And so gaining that experience as a teaching assistant from your undergrad, we thought was going to be very valuable to us during our graduate days. So what I decided to do, and once I made up my mind that I wanted to go to grad school, what were the materials or the things that I needed? we realized from all the admissions requirements was that you needed your transcript, you needed a CV, and you needed a certificate. I would say statement of purpose wasn't that of great importance at that time. Things have changed now, I know. And so, yes, we did write statement of purpose, but I didn't really place much emphasis on that. I don't even recall the things I wrote in that. So I made a list of schools that I wanted to go to. So once we graduated, and then we were waiting for our national service, for sure, I knew that I was going to be a teaching assistant because our department had asked us, those of us who wanted to serve as teaching assistants, so they can send it to the NSS. So I knew for sure I was coming to serve as a teaching assistant at the University of Cape Coast. So once we started our teaching assistant somewhere in September, I started applying for my transcripts, made copies, and then certified the copies. And then we graduated and had our certificate. So somewhere in, I think October, November of 2016, admissions had opened, and so I started my applications. The first school I applied to was University of Saskatchewan. I had emailed one supervisor who wrote back to me and told me that he was interested in my background, and so wanted to schedule a Twitter, I think it was a Zoom or some video call conference. I don't remember the platform that we used though, but so we did that interview and, asked me questions about my background, what I want. And then he was like, hey, I am interested. So go ahead and then apply. So I put in my application for University of Saskatchewan that was my first school. And University of Alberta was one of the schools that I also was very interested because one of my undergraduate supervisors graduated from University of Alberta. And so anytime he comes to lectures and, he seems that we are not serious, he always make reference to, oh, you can't do this at U of A. And he had a funny way of saying it. So we were like, what is this U of A stuff? So I look into it and gracefully, they had a process. So the U of A had a process that they call the pre-application process. What that means was that everybody is welcome to submit their application documents. So you submit your transcript, your CV, your certificate, and then they had a form that you can fill. And on the form, you are to select 3 prospective supervisors that you think once you are admitted, you want to work with them. And then you submit without any payment. So they use that to screen. And so people wouldn't be wasting money applying when they know that they can't admit that number of people. So I did a pre-application, and then I think a few weeks or maybe a month later, I got a feedback that go ahead and then submit your main application, and that's when you pay. So I have been told that in most cases, once you are selected to do the main application, then it means you'll be admitted. So you have that assurance that if everything goes well, once you had that call to go in with your application, you'll be admitted. So I put in my application for that. But I should say that prior to that, when we were doing our national service, September up to October, November, before the application window was open, and even before we graduated, I had sent a couple of emails to, many profs from various universities. And I should say I had almost like 95%, negative response or no response at all. And I didn't understand at that time, but now some of them make sense to me. So I applied to University of Alberta for my second choice. And then I looked to United States. And then I applied to East Tennessee State University. And then applied to Mississippi State University. And I remember one of my lecturers, Professor Suman, told me, Isaac, you have a very good, GPA, you have a publication. And he was a visiting lecturer at Oxford. So why don't you put in the application for Oxford? But I should say that time I didn't have even confidence in myself. And, hearing the name Oxford, I was like, and I think they also had a high application fee. That was $150, which was very expensive. So I created a profile, and for whatever reason, I just stopped. I didn't even proceed with the application. So I stopped that one and then applied to one university in Finland. So I applied to two in Canada, two in the US, and then one in Finland. Now, what I was, curious about was which aspect of chemistry, was I going to do? And most of our seniors who had gone into grad school were all in the analytical or physical or environmental chemistry. And few people, probably not even anybody, was into organic. And so I was curious, like, why not organic? And I felt like during my undergraduate studies, I love organic chemistry. It was my favorite organic. It was my favorite chemistry, I should say. So I decided that, okay, I'll start reading about organic chemistry more and look into websites of the profs, the research that they do whilst I was waiting for admission. And I would say that my entire life, if there has been a particular time in my life where I have monitored my email, was during the period from February to April, when I knew that admissions were, decisions were being made and people are getting there. So every email alert, you go and check to see that it's a school email or something. So the first admission that came was University of Saskatchewan. And, I was very excited, but at the same time too, I wanted to go to U of A. And so, of course, I accepted, because once you get admission, they give you a timeline for you to accept. And so I accepted that. And I think the next one that came was Eastern State University. And that was a school, majority of my friends that we applied. I think 5 or 6 of us who applied there, we all had the admission. So I accepted that one too. And the next one was Mississippi State University. Very good funding. I think that was the university that had the best funding of all the universities that I admitted. I was admitted. So I also accepted that one. And then later, University of Alberta finally came. But I was still not sure, because all my guys were going to the States, and I was like, no, I'm the only one coming to Canada. So, and at that time, Canada also had this visa application requirements, where even if you have a full funding, you have to provide a $10,000 as sponsorship or some kind of money to show that you have, even with full funding. So getting that bank statement was very challenging. I mean, there was nobody within my family or my circle that could provide me with that. So it forced me to start putting in my US visa application for Mississippi State University. I applied for the visa. I booked a date for the interview, but I was still not, interested in going to the States. So luckily, one friend of mine, Dr. Obed Edijemfi, who was my mate, he was also my roommate, had a family friend who he approached and said, this my friend had admission, he's going to graduate school, but he had a full funding, but they still need 10,000 bank statements for his visa. And that man didn't know me, he knew Obed, so he provided that bank statement for me. So I had to postpone my US visa interview, put in my Canadian visa application, and then it got approved, and I didn't even bother to go for the US visa interview, and emailed the other universities that I'm sorry, I have taken this offer, and so I wouldn't be able to come. So I declined the other 4 universities, and then pursued to go to University of Alberta. So you've heard of University of Alberta, one of the best universities in Canada, very competitive, and coming into organic chemistry with almost like zero background. and many of you know, in Africa and some parts of the developing country, we don't have the facility for research. And I was coming into a program which is research intense focused. And I remember very well speaking to Dr. Francis Nsia, who did his PhD at University of Alberta, and advising me, telling me how competitive, and especially organic chemistry coming from Ghana with that background, how challenging it's going to be. And I knew it was going to be very challenging. So I arrived in Canada, and let me tell you one thing about my journey. So I booked this one airline. I don't want to, mention the name of the airline though, but it was one of the worst experience. First time traveler, got my first layover, and for whatever reason, they said my connecting flight was gone, or we didn't make it. So they are looking for another one. And I had to stay at that airport for 3 days. Got so frustrated. I didn't know what to do. But luckily, I got to Montreal, and then I also missed my connecting flight from Montreal to Edmonton. So that place was very good. They got me a hotel, slept, and then the next day I got to Edmonton, and my family friend who I got to know through Dr. Nsia came to pick me up, and then I came somewhere in August, and classes was going to begin in September. So I had some few kind of weeks to rest, relax, and then started my journey. Went to University of Alberta for the first time. I knew there were some Ghanaians there, but those were people that I didn't know. So I had to find my way, go get we call it one card, your student ID card. And sometimes it took me over hours to locate a particular building. You ask someone, he directs you, you go, and then you find every place look identical to me. And sometimes I didn't know even where to go. So went through all those process, had my ID card, and did all those stuff, and classes, began. And I used to stay at the north side of Edmonton. So I take a train, and we had a train stop at the university. So you stop there and then you get out. But it has 2 entrances. One leads straight to my department, and one leads to another place that you have to walk. And I always got myself confused. When I step out from the train, I didn't know which direction to go. It was very funny. And there are a couple of times that I even missed my train stage at the stop. By the time I realized I'll be at a different stop, and I had to stay in or jump onto another train coming to the other side, and then got into it. Those were some of the fun stuff. So classes began. I was coming from Ghana, where sometimes within a semester you can take like 6, 7 courses. So when I came, and they said for master students, you have to take 3 credit courses in total for your program. And then for a PhD, you have to take 12 credits, 4 courses, which makes it 12. And master's 3 courses, making it 9. So, it's like I used to take, 6 courses. So let me register for 3 courses within that semester. And the first time I went to, the first course was Advanced Organic Synthesis, taught by Professor Dennis Hall. And then they handed over to us, a note or lecture notes. And I felt, oh, that was the note for the entire semester, only to find out that that was just for that particular week. And if I remember, it was almost over 100 pages of notes with, references. And I was like, oh my God, this is going to be very interesting. And I've taken some organic chemistry courses back home in Ghana. And I think I did synthesis. But the understanding of how we approach organic chemistry was completely different. We're memorizing, we disconnect bonds, we just disconnect because we feel like we have to disconnect. Then I got here, and it was like I was starting from scratch, and I knew it was going to be challenging. So what I did was sat in for some of the advanced undergraduate courses during my free times, just to refresh my mind and get the basics. So I could sit in a 3rd year undergraduate organic chemistry course fourth year undergraduate, or just, and that was something that really helped me a lot. Because, and during my PhD days, most of the people who were in my class were people who have gone or had their masters already. So some of them, the advanced organic chemistry course was something that they've done. Analytical, quantitative, NMR spectroscopy, some of them had done that before. And I remember going to this prof's office and asking, and he said, I hope you are not coming from the university that uses this particular book. He mentioned a book, and that was also the book that, back home, we thought it was the best book. And only to find out that book is not, anything. But anyway, sat in a couple of undergraduate courses. And then I started appreciating organic chemistry. I started appreciating what it means by to form a bond, what it means by lone pairs of electron, what it means by, homo, LUMO, all those things we heard back home. I didn't know what that is. sp2 hybridized, excited, like we've heard it, but the understanding wasn't that clear for me. So once I started sitting in that class, I started appreciating organic chemistry, and it became more easier for me, day in and day out. And I should say, and I always tell my mentees that I go for conferences. So, we have departmental seminars, you go in, visiting speakers come, and people are asking questions, and you are sitting there like, you don't even understand what the person is presenting, not to think of formulating a question. So it got to a point, I called some of my friends in the States, Obed, George, and we've been discussing. I was like, is it the same for you guys, or it's just me? And yes, they were in different divisions. They were not in organic, but at least graduates. And it was almost across board that, it was very challenging to even understand. So fast forward, my first year, so at U of A, you take your courses before you start your lab work. So you use your 1 year for your course work. So I used the fall and winter semester for my courses. And we have what we call the 502. So the 502, basically, it's an exams that you write to, show that indeed you qualify to do the PhD. So what they do is you select a topic from any research group, apart from the research group that you want to join, on a particular topic, make PowerPoint slides. So you can select about 3 or 4 or 5 papers. And that particular topic shouldn't have a review on it. There shouldn't be, because if there was a review, majority of the hard questions would have been answered in those reviews or those things. So there shouldn't be a review on that particular topic. And nobody in the department should have presented it in the past, maybe 6 or 10 years ago. So it should be a unique topic. So you select that, you present to the faculty, the entire department, including students. They ask you questions, and then they decide that, you pass your 502. And then now you know that indeed you are truly in the PhD program. And I should say that in my winter term, I registered for this course. We had courses that we call special courses in organic chemistry. So I registered for carbohydrate chemistry. And it was very tough, challenging. And I remember we wrote our first midterm, and the grade wasn't that good. So I went to this prof who was teaching that course, and I was discussing with him, and he was like, are you sure you can do a PhD? And that was heartbroken for me. I went home, sat in my bed. I was like, I came to this prof at least to get some encouragement. And if you are just basing it because of one exams on a midterm, and what got me so sad was that course was taught by him, and he was an expert. His research group was doing carbohydrate chemistry. And the people who sat in that course were members of his research group who were sometimes even in their 3rd year, 2nd year, and have vast experience with carbohydrate chemistry. So I sat down and I picked my laptop and I started drafting an email to my PhD supervisor that I think I don't want to do the PhD. I just want to do my master's. And I remember trying to email Mississippi State University because I had deferred my program for 1 year. So I was like, maybe I need to be in the state to get closer to my friends. I was so down. I drafted the email and I don't know what happened. I stopped sending it to my supervisor. So went through the course, had a grade, had a GPA that maintained me or allowed me to be in the PhD program, and then moved to the lab to start my research. So I was very lucky. I had an amazing supervisor, Professor John Vedras, such an amazing. And I also was very lucky that I found myself in an amazing research group where I don't know how to describe my lab mates, welcoming, friendly. Everybody is willing to help, to learn together, and to grow together. So my first project, I was working under the supervision of one postdoc, Dr. Christian, who was, guiding me through. And when I was being showed my film hood, I had my, strength line for my argon. This was something I haven't seen before in Ghana, working in the film hood, doing a reaction under argon or nitrogen, setting up. It was completely new for me. But I was very lucky. My postdoc taught me, guide me through all those, set up my film hood, place order for my glasswares that I needed for my experiments. Some of them I had it from previous or past members from their drawers or their bench. And then first reaction was this chemistry where I was forming an amide bond. That was my first reaction. So I had a carboxylic acid and then amine, and then I was activating the carboxylic acid. So I'm being more technical, but basically what I'm talking about is there was a functional group, carboxylic acid, and then an amine. So you have these two functional groups, and you put them together. The carboxylic acid is not that reactive with amine, so we activate it with an activating reagent. So one of the most popular activating reagents that we use in peptide chemistry is HAR2 together with a base, dipia, and then DCM. And did that, purified it, and then did my first silica column ever. Had my product. Then I went to my postdoc. He was like, okay, let's prepare a sample for NMR mass spec to make sure that we had the compound. And yes, I've taken NMR, I did NMR course. I know the theory, but I have never in my life operated an NMR instrument before. There was this fear within me, especially when you're being told how expensive that it is. And you want to be so careful that you don't want to. I'm saying this because where we come from, we don't have access to these. And so the confidence is not even there. So I remember going on, putting sample on the NMR, always being so careful because what if I break it? Hey, what's going to happen? So submitted my first compound, which was an amide, some small peptide, had the results, and then sat down with my postdoc. We opened the file and then, taught me, okay, this is how it is. You integrate, we analyze how much protons, then we have, the compound matches, the mass spec also matches. And so you form your product. How much purity is it? What is the percentage of the impurities in there? Then you do all those kind of stuff. Then gradually started loving independently. I still work with the postdoc for almost about 5-6 months under his, supervision. Such an amazing postdoc, and also had some senior members within our group who always will be there to help you setting up a reaction, sending your samples for analysis, or even processing the NMR data to integrate to, understand what you formed. So once I became more comfortable and became more independent, had a project, my biggest project, which was to synthesize lipid 2 and some peptide. Very interesting research. So on a typical day for me during my PhD days, wake up in the morning, sometimes take breakfast, sometimes don't take breakfast, go to the lab. And I should say that with all this, you were assigned teaching duties. So you teach sometimes once in a week or twice in a week for help sessions too. But if I am not teaching and then I go to the lab, go to my film hood or sit behind my computer, take my lab notebook, put up my reaction scheme, table of reagents, make sure that, everything is okay, walk through our, storage, pick up my reagents that I need for the reaction, properly dressed with my lab coats, safety goggles, and then gloves, and then the safety boots. Go pick up my reagents in a container. It's not safe for you to pick up reagents walking around with your hands. You can slip, fall, and then can cause fire or any hazard. So you go with a container, a basket, or anything, take it up, and then bring it to your film hood. Those that you have to weigh, you take it to the balance, depending on which reaction you are doing. If it's an air sensitive, you go to the glove box, do your weighing over there, whatever chemistry that you're doing, set up your reaction. Some reactions can take hours, some can take minutes, some can take days. So sometimes you can set multiple reactions, and then along the way, you'll be monitoring the reaction by TLC or by LCMS and so on and so forth. Then once your reaction are done, sometimes, you'll be reading papers whilst you're waiting or writing your experimental reports to make sure that once you have your data, you just put in your data. And that really helped me. So most of us who are in organic chemistry and you write your thesis, majority of your thesis goes to your experimental. Imagine for 4 years, you are making about 150 compounds, and each of them have the experimental procedure. You have to do characterization, IR, mass spec, NMR, a lot. So my supervisor always encouraged us that write your experimentals along so that when the time comes for you to write your thesis, at least you have a draft. You are not starting from scratch. And that really, really helped me. So once I set up my reaction, whilst waiting for my reaction to go on, I started writing. So this became a routine. Wake up, sometimes you stay up late, some reactions, you set up a column and you are separating and it's not separating well. You stay up late, sometimes even overnight up to the next morning because you can't just leave. Now, one challenging aspect has to do with immigration. And most international students, you always have to be in status for you to get. So I remember there was one time that my study permit was about expiring. But at the same time, too, my passport was about expiring. So I needed to renew my passport first before So I put in my passport renewal form. And for whatever reason, it took like 3-4 months. I wasn't hearing from the embassy. Started calling, sending emails to both the Canadian, the embassy at Toronto and then the one in Washington, trying to connect me to the appropriate, because my university, my department kept sending me emails that I am out of status and I have to. And if not, my funding is going to be terminated. So I put in my study permit application, and then you can use proof of application or proof that you have applied and you are waiting. But even that, you still constantly get emails that you are out of status, you are going to terminate your fund. And it was very frustrating. I called, sent emails to the Ghanaian Visa Processing Center, no response. So I had to reach out to the High Commissioner then, IUKO2. sent an email. In the email, I was very harsh, and I was like, you know what, my funding depends on this. It's been over 5 months now. My passport, no reply. So they got back to me and said, okay, well, your passport is in Ghana. Election time is around. People are some excuses that doesn't make sense. So we are bringing back your old passport with a stamp indicating that you can use it to apply. And when we are done with elections and appointments or whatever, so many reasons, you can bring it back and they will bring you your new. So they brought back my old passport with a stamp indicating that they've extended it for me to be able to use it to apply for my study permit. So I used that, had my study permit, and after elections and some months or later, they got back to me, and then I had to send the old passport, and then they brought the new passport. So, and this is not unique to me. A lot of international students go through that. And sometimes it can become very frustrating when you get emails that you're out of status and your funding is going to, I know people who get their funding terminated. It becomes so frustrated and very challenging combining that with academics. Fast forward, went through the process, did so many stuff. And I say that I had time where, you spend time with your lab mates, we go out, we play soccer, we play volley. And those were things that really helped me. Life outside the lab. We register for intramurals, we play indoor. For the winter, we play outdoor, summer, and it was very, very helpful. Then time for me to write my thesis, started applying for my postdoc. So I put in my first postdoc in December 2020 and before Christmas. And then January, Scott reached out to me like, hey, I'm interested, let's schedule a Zoom. Did a Zoom, and then I had my offer in January 2020. So that became the motivation for me to even wanting to finish and, the energy to write my thesis. Finished August 10th. I had about 2 weeks to do some minor corrections and drive to the States for 42 hours. So I drove from Canada to US myself. Very nice journey though, I enjoyed doing that. 42 hours from Edmonton to Connecticut and started my postdoc there at Yale. I mean, you've done chemistry, so basically if you go to any lab, nothing is new to you, except that new people and some labs have their own policies. An amazing group of people, an excellent postdoc supervisor, started my project, everything went so well, had interesting results, started writing the manuscript for publication, and then I applied to Northern RNA, had the offer, and I had to drive back again to Canada, another 42 hours, an excellent journey. And that is what I have been doing since September 2022 up to now. I love what I'm doing. I love science. I'm so passionate about science. I'm so passionate about drug discovery, and it's fun. So the journey from Ghana to Edmonton to US, has been amazing. I would say overall, I have learned a lot. I've come across amazing scientists, amazing group of people who I have had opportunity to learn from them, to add to my existing knowledge and develop. And I keep learning. There is no single time that I don't want to learn. And it's been an amazing journey. And if you are here, you are an international student or you're a prospective graduate student, it's not an easy journey, I should say, but it's also doable. And one thing I want to say is don't rush into choosing any professor or any supervisor for choosing sake. Think through, because your success at grad school much also depends on the research group that you are. If you are not careful to find yourself in a lab or a supervisor that there's no that connection, is going to really, really affect you. And be open to learn. That is something that really helped me. I wasn't shy to ask a question. I wasn't shy to go. I remember the staff at our NMR. We became I'm always there, Mark. I'm running this. And I should say that I came with 0 NMR experience, but now I am one of the best people who graduated from my research group who have vast experience with NMR. My postdoc work was entirely structural elucidation. Like, think of 2Ds, NMR, COSY, ROSY, NOSY, TOXY, all of these. And sometimes I sit back and I was like, how did this happen? And it's all because I allowed myself to be taught. I was very, humble, go ask questions, how to set up your own, experiment, how to manually tune probe, set up your own parameters. And this was something that I started with 0 experience. So I want to encourage you that if you are going through graduate studies as an international student, there are so many things. You are away from your family, finances can be challenging, academics can be challenging, immigration can be challenging, but please stay positive, talk to people, use the appropriate resources. Each university have international student service, they have counseling service, your supervisor is there, departments have all services available. Let us make good use of it and don't just be in your corner and suffer alone. Speak out, let people know what you're going through, because graduate studies is intense, is demanding, and can be very stressful. I will be ending here, and then I will allow people to come up and ask any question you want to ask, anything you want to know about my journey, how it has been, and what I did. Perhaps I wasn't able to touch on every aspect, but I just wanted to make this one shot. And next week, we'll be bringing people on board from different backgrounds, not just those in STEM, those from business, the social sciences, education. People will be coming to share their stories, their experiences, what they did, and how they became successful during their study. So thank you for your attention. And if you want to ask a question, please click on the react symbol. I'll bring you up and then you can ask your question. Or if you also have anything you want to share, please feel free and use the react symbol and I'll bring you up. Thank you.